Hello everyone, so today we are here with our next video on ancient Indian history, which will deal with early Vedic period. And previously we made 3 videos on prehistory of India, then Chalcolithic period and Harappan civilization. So if you have not watched those videos, please go and watch, and then you will understand things better. So the sources from which I have made these videos are NCERT old and new, the new NCERT series and the old one, especially the R.S. Sharma book that I have consulted, good book. So that also I have consulted, and then there are two other sources. One is the Wonder That Was India, and other is the Upinder Singh. But as I mentioned earlier, also Upinder Singh book is a bulky book, so I have not taken a lot of material from that. Only those things which are important I have taken. Okay, so previously in last video we discussed about the decline of Harappan civilization, and after Harappan civilization we will discuss here the Vedic age. So we are going to discuss the early Vedic age today, and tomorrow we will discuss the later Vedic age. So basically the early Vedic age is also called the Rig Vedic period. Okay, so it is from 700 to 1000 BC. And why it is called Vedic age? Because Vedas are the prime source of information. Okay, so initially the Aryan people, they came in different groups in India in different phases, and they occupied the region around Punjab, and it was here on the bank of river Saraswati that Rig Veda was composed. So this area is important, you should remember this. Okay, so you all will be knowing that there are 4 Vedas, and what are those? Rig Veda, Samveda, Yajurveda and Atharva Veda. So the latter Vedas, that is Samveda, Yajurveda, Atharvaveda, were written in later Vedic period. So the sages during those times, they had highly developed oral tradition of Shruti and Smriti, and that is why the Vedic corpus is also called Shruti or Smriti literature. So the Rig Veda contains suktas, which literally means well said. Okay, and they are what to say, what you call in Hindi, chandabadh. Okay, so they have syllables, proper syllables arranged in syllable, and that is why they can be remembered. And if you will try to do any interpolation, that is very difficult to do. So was not written, was but was remembered through oral tradition of Shruti and Smriti, and this helped to find interpolation. If you will try to add something, that chand will break, and you will catch that something has been interpolated. So that was one of the things which made it somewhat pure. Okay, and it was highly respected as very sacred text, the Vedas. So the Rig Veda has 10 mandalas or parts. 2 to 7 mandalas were written earlier, and they are the earlier composition, and the others are later composition. Now, who were these Aryan people? So they were basically pastoral community belonging to steppes of Central Asia. They migrated to India in phases, not single phase, but different phases were there, and different groups migrated at different times. Then was not a race as propounded by Hitler. Aryans were not a race as Hitler propounded. All humanity is a single race. So the anthropologists nowadays say that all humanity has a single race, and this concept of race is flawed. Okay, so they were at most lingual groups speaking Indo-European languages, having a common culture. So this is the best definition of Aryan people, that they belong to this particular geographical location. They were a pastoral community, and they used a common language, that is Indo-European language, and had a common culture. So this term, Indo-European term, was propounded by Thomas Young. So this you might know. Then Sanskrit was one of the early branch of Indo-European languages. Okay, and there was a lot of similarity in the Latin, then Greek, and classical European languages and Sanskrit. So that also we'll see later. So, but Sanskrit was gradually modified by the local dialects of Dravidians and Mundas. So Munda and Dravidian dialects are other languages which are spoken here. So some of the words were taken into Sanskrit from there. So the early Aryans, and the very first Aryan people who came to this land, they amalgamated among the local people, and that is why their skin color somewhat changed. And when the later Aryans came in big numbers, they started calling them Dasas, while the indigenous people who were darker in skin color were called Dasyus. So these are two terms very much important, and you should remember what do you mean by Dasas and Dasyus. So here you can see from the area of Caspian Sea, near Caspian Sea, they came to India in different phases. Okay. So one important point I want to add is Ancient Society of Calcutta, Asiatic Society of Calcutta was founded in 1783 by Sir William Jones, okay, during British period. And he was the first person who found that classical European language like Greek and Latin and Sanskrit had a common ancestor. Okay, so he found that matter, in Latin you had a term called matter which means mother in English, and you had a term called matri in Sanskrit. So matter, mother, matri, so these are very much similar. The same is the pattern for patter. You have pitri, okay. So you have a term in in English, patricide. So that has been taken from these words. So there is a lot of similarities between these words. So he came to a conclusion that both the languages had a common ancestor, and it is from there that the study started. So one apna gyan I want to share with you. So there was a question in UPSC, how much reliable it is to use Shruti and Smriti literature as an historical source. So what I would suggest is, please do not give any definitive answers in UPSC that it is a good source of history or it is a bad source. It can't be taken as a source of history at all. So don't give any definitive answers, rather follow the middle path. Middle path, as you know, it was propounded by Buddha. So the same thing you have to do in UPSC answer also. Take something from both the sides, okay, and then write your answers. So you have to give some logic why it can be taken as historical source and why it cannot be. Okay, one of the reason is that it was religious in nature and not historic. So there can be a lot of points you can add, but what I wanted to share is this logic. Always follow middle path. Then tribal conflicts. We'll discuss tribal conflict. When Aryan came to this land, Indian subcontinent, they possessed chariots driven by horses. They also had better bronze weapons, and they might be using coat of mail. So what is coat of mail? That is vermin. That is a type of, you can say, armor. Okay. So they were also most probably using all these things. So that is why they were superior, and that helped them. So two type of conflict is found in Rig Veda. Okay, one conflict was with the aboriginal people of India. Indra was called Purandar. It is assumed that he destroyed the forts of aboriginal peoples. They had conflict with Dasas and Dasyus, which I mentioned earlier. Then conflict among different tribes of Aryans was also there. So they had initially 5 tribes. What are those? Panchajana. They were called Panchajana, and if you try to find out, you can search on Google and find out the names of those tribes. It has been given in Upinder Singh, but here we will not go in that detail. Then 2 tribes which are important here are Bharata and Trishu. They were the ruling Aryans clan, and they were supported by a sage called Vasishtha. So the name Bharatvarsha was named after this clan. Okay, this is important point. So a famous battle which occurred during this period was the Battle of 10 Kings, which is very, very important, and was fought at the bank of river Parushini. So UPSC has this habit of asking this sort of question like Champa, which area was called Champa in ancient India. So there was a question like this. So it can be a question, Parushini river. So which river was called Parushini river during ancient period or Vedic period? So that was Ravi. So after that what happens? And the Bharata and Purus, there was another clan called Purus. They combined together to form a third clan which was named Kurus. Kuruvanshi, Puruvanshi, you might be knowing. Then Kurus and Panchalas, they joined hand and they dominated the North Indian plains or the Upper Gangetic Basin. So this is all about your tribal conflicts and that. Then we'll come to material life. What were the material advancement? So the Aryans, they possessed horses, chariot and better bronze arms. Copper was supplied from Khetri mines to them. Then they had a better knowledge of agriculture. Plowshare has been mentioned in Rig Veda. Sowing, harvesting, threshing and knowledge of season was also known. Then they were pastoral community. Why? Because multiple mention has been there of cow, and cow was a form of wealth, and most wars were fought for cows. And war had a special name called Gavishti, and Gavishti you can say GAU, that is, this is a term for cow. Okay, so gift to the priest were also in the form of cow and also in the form of women slaves who were used as domestic help. So land was not used as there was no paucity of the same, because they were pastoral community and they had all the lands out there for them. So land was not that prized possession. Okay. So Rig Veda mentions different types of occupation. What are those? Carpenters, chariot maker, the weaver, leather workers and potters. So these things were known to them. Then metal work in copper and bronze was done, and there is a mention of Aryans in Rig Veda. So no evidence of trade has been found so far, and we don't know whether they were aware of sea and ocean or not. Although Samudra has been mentioned a few times in Rig Veda, but that doesn't mean sea or ocean during that time. So they didn't live in cities, so they were basically rural communities. And as far as pottery is concerned, painted grey ware pottery were found at Bhagwanpura. So this is very important, and it was a culture which was painted grey ware pottery culture. Then iron and cereals were not found during this culture. So later on we will see that iron was discovered and cereals was also grown. But during the early Vedic period, that is Rig Vedic period, they were not grown. Then in Bhagwanpura itself, a 13-room mud house was found that points that it might be a house of tribal chief or a big family. Then we'll come to tribal polity. What was the polity at that time? Tribal chief was the center of administration. He led the tribe in wars, and that is why he was so much respected. He was called Rajan. Okay, but the Raja of today and Rajan of that day was very much different. The post may be hereditary, but the king did not had ultimate power, so his power basically was very limited. So when we compare with Rajas of today or near past, he was elected and used to consult Samiti for decision. So he was not an autocrat. He used to consult Samiti. He protected the cattle, that is why he was called Gopa. Fought wars and offered prayers to God on behalf of tribes. Then tribal assemblies mentioned in Rig Veda are Sabha, then Samiti, then Vidhata and Gana. So these were different type of tribal assemblies which are mentioned in Rig Veda. And what was their use? They were used for deliberative, military and religious functions. So even women attended Sabha and Vidhata during Rig Vedic times. So later on we will see that the status of women will degenerate and they were not allowed to sit in Sabha or Samiti. But initially during Rig Vedic time they were allowed to attend Sabha and Vidhata. Okay. Two most important political assemblies were Sabha and Samiti. King showed eagerness to win their support. So this is important, Sabha and Samiti. And what is Sabha and what was Samiti? The Sabha was an assembly of learned and virtuous ones. Okay, the member of Sabha were nominated by kings and called Sabhasad. So nowadays also these terms are used, so it is very easy to remember. The Samiti comprising the people's representative, or it represented the people in general. So these are the differences between Sabha and Samiti. So you should remember this, these are very much important. Then the king was assisted by Purohit. Purohit had a big role to play. He assisted the king in different yajnas and even in wars. So two of the Purohits has been mentioned in Rig Veda, who were Vasishtha and Vishwamitra. Then Senani also played important role during wars and battle. Then voluntary offering from people to the king was called Bali. So Bali was some sort of, you can say, tax, but it was not tax as it was not tax, but it was voluntary offering initially during the Rig Vedic time. But later on we'll see that the nature of Bali will change. And then spoils of war were distributed in some assemblies, and Vidhata was one of such assembly. Then theft and burglary was for cow. Okay, that was prevalent and that was for cow. Then officer of pastured ground was called Vrajapati. So these terms are very much important and you should note it down and remember. He led the head of family called Kulapas. So Kulapas were basically the head of family. Head of fighting groups were also there. There were small confederacies, the fighting confederacies, and the head of that were called Graminis. Okay, in the beginning Gramini was just head of fighting unit, but gradually he became head of villages. Okay, so this is the evolution of Gramini. Then no regular standing army was maintained during that period, and no tax collection was there. Why no tax collection? Because the economy was basically pastoral and not agricultural, so surplus was not there to collect tax, and they greatly depended on the spoils of wars, and that is why they had so much importance for cow. But during wars, the Rajan mustered different tribal groups like Vrata, Gana, Grama and Sardha. So these are also important, you should remember. Then at that time there was no concept of territorial expansion or any nation. Okay, so that is why you have Jana but not Janapada. The concept of Janapada was absent during that time. Then we will come to tribe and family. People gave primary loyalty to tribe, which was called Jana. Tribe was important, but the concept of Janapada or kingdom was absent during that period. Kingdom was not yet established. Then another term for tribe was Vis, and Vis was divided into Gramas, a small tribe meant for fighting, as I discussed earlier also. And when Gramas clashed with one another, it was called Sangramas. As you know, Sangram means war. We used to hear terms like Devasur Sangram and all. So family was a smallest political unit which was called Kula or Griha, and the head of that, it was a patriarchal system, and the family was generally large and joint family. It was headed by Kulapa, the head of family. The eldest member most probably was head of family, and he was called Kulapa. Then sons were desired compared to daughters, and the reason for it was as wars and conflicts and battles were frequent, so men were desired to fight those battles. So women were allowed to attend assembly, as I discussed earlier also, Sabha and Vidhata. Instance of 5 women composing hymn is also present, like Gargi and all, Maitreyi, you might be knowing. So institution of marriage was established during that period. Okay, that was there. Some instance of polyandry is also present, wherein you have multiple husbands. Then practice of levirate and widow remarriage was also followed. That will become taboo after some time. So what was levirate? If your husband dies, you are allowed to marry the brother of your husband. That is called levirate, and widow remarriage you might be knowing. Then what was the social division during that period? Some differences on physical appearance was present during that time, that is skin color. Varna was term used for color. Aryans were fair and indigenous people during that time were darker. Okay, so this difference might have given rise to social order, but this is generally propounded by British historians. Okay, social division most probably was due to the conquest of indigenous people. The dasas and dasyus were treated as slaves and sudras, okay, respectively. Booty was acquired by chiefs and purohit at the cost of common masses, and that led to social inequalities. Then the society basically was divided into three groups: warrior, priest, and common people. And the fourth group was also there, the Shudras. So in Rig Veda we have one sukta called Purushukta. For the first time in Purushukta it was mentioned in the 13th sloka of Purushukta, the fourfold division of society, and this is the sloka. If you know Sanskrit you can read this. Okay, but the later historian they suggest that the Purushukta Varna verse, which is the above verse, is now generally considered to have been inserted at a later date into Vedic text. Then slaves, cattle, chariot were given as gift, as I mentioned earlier also. Then division based on occupation was there and was not hereditary at that time. The Varna system at that time was not hereditary. So the member of same family were involved in different occupations. Okay. Then still Rig Vedic society was largely egalitarian society. Now we'll see the Rig Vedic gods personified natural forces and venerated them. The people during that period they personified natural forces and venerated them. Hymns were composed in their honors. The main deity was Indra or Purandara, was most venerated, and he was also called also the war god or rain god, and there has been 250 hymns in his honor in Rig Veda. Then the second god was Agni or fire god, was also venerated by Iranians, and he acted as intermediate between humans and gods. Then there was Varuna or water god, and he was the upholder of natural order, which was the Rita. Then Soma was also mentioned. Soma was basically a god of plant, and there was an intoxicated drink which was named after Soma. So it has been mentioned multiple times in Rig Veda. Then Marut or god of storm was also mentioned. Then female divinity were also present, but they were very few in number. Some of them were Aditi and Usha. Usha means the appearance of dawn, and the goddess of that Usha, or she is considered as the daughter of sun. Okay, so but predominance was of male deity as the society was patriarchal. So mode of worship, what was the mode of worship? Recitation of prayer was done, and that was many a time done in chorus, and offerings of sacrifices were also done. So offering of vegetables, barley, etc. were also made, and sacrificial formula or rituals or magical power was not used during that time, but they will start to be used in the later Vedic period. So initially they were not using any magical charm or formula for sacrifices, but later on they will start doing it. Then why did Rig Vedic people worship God at the first? Okay, so they did not wanted to worship for any spiritual uplift, because the concept of that was not present during that period, or for ending any misery of existence. Okay, so this we will see during the Upanishad phase. Okay, this we will discuss. So at that time they asked mainly for praja. So what is the meaning of praja here? Praja means children, and basically son, and then pashu that is cattle, or you can say cow. Then food and wealth or and health. So these were the prime reasons for their worshipping of God. So this was all for today. in the early Vedic period. Thanks for watching. And see, the views for the videos so far has been very low, so we may consider stopping this series. So if the views will remain low, so please try to share this video and subscribe if you have not subscribed, so that our views will increase and we'll make more videos. So tomorrow we'll discuss later Vedic age. Okay, so thank you, thanks for watching.